As you've probably heard, a hopefully precedent-setting 7-week trial just wrapped in Los Angeles after 8 days of jury deliberation, finding that Meta, parent company to Facebook and Instagram, and Google, parent company to YouTube, intentionally designed their products to be addictive to young users, awarding damages to the plaintiff of $2.1 million from Meta and $900,000 from Google. TikTok and Snap were also initially involved in the case, but both companies settled earlier to avoid going to court. Now, Meta and Google both immediately announced their plans to appeal the ruling, but the mood of the public and politicians seems to be shifting against the big tech players, with Meta also being given a $370 million penalty just days before in a New Mexico court that found that Meta failed to safeguard youth on its apps from online predators. There's also a federal trial that will begin this summer on behalf of school districts and parents across the United States that argues that Meta, TikTok, YouTube, and Snap caused mental health-related harms to young users, and hundreds of more cases are lining up in what many are calling a 90s tobacco company-like reckoning, where cigarette companies were legally found to have been lying to the public about the safety of their products and were forced to pay hundreds of billions in penalties. While the tech companies argue that these cases have no grounds, as the CEO of Common Sense Media put it, quote, "Social media giants would never have faced trial if they had prioritized kids' safety over engagement. Instead, they buried their own research showing children were being harmed and used kids and society as guinea pigs in a massive, uncontrolled, and wildly profitable experiment." Now, I'll just note that this exact thing is happening relative to AI right now, too. So the sooner we set some precedents on this, the better. What's interesting about this first successful trial, and many of those that will follow it, I expect, is that the prosecutorial approach is generally avoiding talking about the content young users were exposed to, instead focusing on the design of the platforms themselves. This removes what up until now has been a pretty ironclad defense from social media companies in America in the form of Section 230 protections, which prevents companies from being held liable for content that users post on their platforms. Instead, the prosecution focused on Meta and Google's product design decisions, including infinite scrolling, autoplay videos, algorithmic recommendations, and things like that as the causes of harm. As the lawyer in the LA case said, quote, "These companies built machines designed to addict the brains of children, and they did it on purpose," end quote, pointing to things like a YouTube memo describing viewer addiction as a user goal and an Instagram employee who said that its staff were basically pushers. Now, the penalties in the first case here are just a tiny drop in a gigantic bucket of earnings for a company like Meta, which has an annual net income of around $60 billion. But some are hopeful that this is just the first step along a long overdue path to accountability. For instance, we're now seeing countries banning children from social media, like in Australia. And in 2024, none other than the U.S. Surgeon General said that social media should have warning labels about its mental health harms for youth. And to be clear, I don't think cash payouts for the affected are the big win here at all. What has to happen is that these companies need to make all of their research on harms public. They need to allow independent third-party research into related harms, and they need to take immediate action to mitigate those harms in meaningful ways. This is about change, not about dollars, although maybe a pileup of penalties can help motivate these companies as well. But there also needs to be some rational regulations put in place. So hopefully U.S. politicians will finally start to wake up to the reality here and help get things like the February 2022 Kids Online Safety Act bill passed, which has yet to become law after 4 years. As one of the stewards for that bill said after the LA case was decided, quote, "I would urge any member of Congress that continues to do Mark Zuckerberg's bidding to look at this verdict and their conscience," end quote. So let's see these court cases through. Let's make these companies pay for the harms they've done. But most importantly, let's fix this problem. Put in some much-needed regulations with real teeth, and let's build a better internet for everyone's future, because the youth affected by these issues today will be the adults of tomorrow, and it serves us all not to have them sacrificed on the altar of earnings by a handful of out-of-touch tech billionaires who already have more money than anyone would ever need. As the executive director of the Tech Oversight Project declared, "The era of big tech invincibility is over, After years of gaslighting from companies like Google and Meta, new evidence and testimony have pulled back the curtain and validated the harms young people and parents have been telling the world about for years." End quote. On behalf of the children we've lost and the young people still suffering the well-documented negative effects of social media, I sure hope so. I'm the other Mac.